down to you. For the most part, the first form of the boss isn't too bad. After a while of hitting him, he'll start to break apart and turns into 3 smaller bats that drop little pieces of gold as they go. Try to get into the corner away from it and let it come down to you, and then whip the crap out of it a few times to do a good amount of damage. Once you hit each form enough, you'll be able to break apart most of them and take out each one. When you're down to only 1 or 2 left, just take your time staying away from them, watching for their little drops, finish them off, grab the orb, and move on. After stage number 9, we actually stop using numbers for the levels and we move on to letters, as now we go into Stage A, the Clock Tower. Familiar music to any Castlevania will start playing in the background as we start to begin our climb of the long, winding Clock Tower. Like many of the other Clock Tower levels in the Castlevania series, there's tons of different gears that are moving that you have to jump on in order to get across different platforms. This level is one of the trickiest and probably the hardest levels so far that we've dealt with. Mainly because of all the different platforms that you're going to have to jump up, and most of the level is climbing, so if you make some mistakes you may end up falling and losing a life that way. Here we have to jump onto a gear and then use that in order to jump up and swing onto one of the chain hooks. This is the first time we'll be seeing this a little bit more throughout the stage of actually using different types of gameplay that we've been doing, using it at one specific spot. Be sure coming up to duck on this large gear and to be able to jump off quickly so that you don't end up falling down the other side. This is one of the trickier areas right here. What I like to do is do a big, huge swing down, and when I come up on the last swing, immediately let go and hang onto the stairs. If you don't do this, you'll have to deal with that skeleton knight down on the right side, and it may be really tricky to get onto the platform with him without accidentally getting hit by him and knocked backwards into the pit. That particular spot may take a time or two in order to get used to. In the next area, we have some very large gears that break off and start rolling towards you. Just be careful and either try to get back to the next previous platform before it, or be sure to try to get out of the way of its normal movement in order to avoid taking damage. Here we have another tricky area to deal with, as you have to deal with axe knights that you really won't be able to take out easily, as you're working your way up holding onto a chain. Be sure to use the different lengths of the whip to your advantage so that you can dodge the axe while still hanging onto the chain. The second one of these areas is a little bit more tricky than the first one because now we have one of those dragon skeletons that spit fire. Try to hang all the way down using the full length of your chain to try to avoid both fireballs that will probably come out while you go past. Along here, be sure to grab the health if you do need it at this point, as we move on and get ready to fight the boss. The boss of this level is a large mummy. The mummy teleports onto screen, usually in the center first. This will give you a good opportunity to start lashing in some hits from the left side, as its fireballs cannot hit you on the left platform. Just stand there and keep lashing out with your items, as well as your whip to do a lot of damage. If he comes right back to the same platform, just repeat the same process. The only times you're really going to have to change this up is when he appears on the far right platform or the far left platform. If he does appear on the far right, he will once again start using those fireballs. So just getting close enough so you're out of the range of the fireballs and keep using your whip. If for some reason he gets on the left side, just stay on top of the platform in the center or far right, and you should be able to avoid all the projectiles will shoot out there. Once he's done, we grab our orb and move on to Stage B. Stage B is not only the last stage, not only has another classic Castlevania song playing in the background, it also is easily the hardest stage available in the whole game. In the first area, we have another one of those staircase areas where you can jump down a little bit and take some shortcuts, but you want to be very careful. The pirate type of skeletons can be a real pain. They have a good reach and can do some good damage to you, so get used to fighting them early on. In the second area, we have a large bridge that we must cross, and you must keep moving as bats will form behind you, and you'll be able to easily get hit by them if you slow down at all or fall back down into a pit. As long as you keep moving and don't really try to pick up any of the candles that are along the bridge, you shouldn't really slow down, and that way you will be able to get across it. This area is where the fun really begins. You have a large spike ball that's rolling across the very bottom of the screen that doesn't stop, and every staircase you climb up will fall apart on you as you climb. If you fall down on one of these falling staircases, you're out of luck and you're going to have to start over. During this part, you really have no time to breathe. Take out any enemy that gets directly in your path, such as the golems, which will take about 3 hits to take out, but other than that, just keep on moving. If the enemy, like that golem to the right, isn't directly in your path, you really shouldn't have to worry about it. When we get here, the falling staircases stop coming at us, and we now have to deal with moving rock platforms. These platforms move rather quickly, and it'll take a time or two to get used to their pattern, and be very careful because most of them are going to lead you right into a spike wall above you that'll make you lose a life instantly. Thankfully, after we finally get past that area, we just have some normal staircases to go up. These are the ones you can take a little bit more time than usual, and just try to take out the enemies while still moving up the staircase. Thankfully, once we reach here, we're almost to the end. We have to deal with a few more of the up-moving platforms. Move very quickly to the left, because the spike wall will be coming very quickly. Once you reach the top and enter the doorway, it's time for a boss battle of the level, but we're finally past the real tough part. The first boss we tangle with is Slowbro. This skeletal type enemy has a spear that not only can shoot out and towards you, it also can fire fireballs. Here's the key to the battle. Deliver a hit to him and then walk away immediately to the opposite side of where he is. He will fly up into the air and land where you were standing. So if you time this correctly, you'll be able to avoid all his hits. The bad thing about him is, though, you cannot hurt him while he's black. You can only hurt him once his color changes back to the normal skeletal color. After a while, the battle will get a little bit tougher as the spear breaks. He'll then start charging forward towards you, and this can be a lot tougher to dodge. Try this time to move as far away as possible from him. This way you may be able to avoid that charge he does at you, and still deliver a hit. Once you defeat Slowbro, there's still more bosses to go, as we now have a couple more bosses before we get to Dracula. Climb up the staircases to get to the next battle. Be sure to grab any of the candles if you do need them, to grab any extra projectiles you may want. Our next boss is Gaibon, who would later team up with Slowbro as a boss battle in Symphony of the Night. Gaibon flies across the top part of the screen. I find the blue form that he starts off with a little bit harder. He stomps down to the ground, fires fireballs at you, as well as spikes will fall down from the ceiling. Stand on the left or right platform in order to deliver a good amount of damage. When he changes forms to his red form, keep hitting him when he gets low enough. However, when he stops completely, just step far enough away so you can avoid the projectiles he shoots out, and still hit him directly with your whip in a diagonal pattern. Once he's done, we now have 2 bosses taken care of. However, we still have one more boss to go before we actually can face off with Dracula. Thankfully though, there is a health item from the first candle on the left side of the next set of platforms, so you can grab that before we go to the boss. This boss can definitely be tough, and we've seen him many times before. We have to face off with the Grim Reaper himself, Death. This is where my projectile to cross has come in handy for me, as I can hit him while he's flying across the air. The hardest part about this battle, and what's going to deliver so much damage to you, is his projectile signals. Try to do your best to avoid them, or destroy them with your whip so you can avoid taking damage. When he comes down to the right side, he stops and starts pulling you towards him, while also allowing his sickle to fly across the screen and come back towards you. Step away just a little bit, turn around real fast, deliver a hit, and then start moving immediately back in the left direction to avoid actually running into him, and when that sickle gets close, jump over it and continue doing so. After he's taken care of, move across the final platform and head to the final tower. A very well-known hint is you can jump over to the left side across some invisible platforms, in which case you can get a large amount of upgrades for yourself right away. You can do this each and every time you lose a life so you can get full health, as well as it will drop some max hearts to max your heart counter up at 99, as well as drop you the times abilities, the second and third times Roman numerals, so that you can have multiple projectiles at once during the Dracula fight. Once we enter the chamber, some lightning starts spewing, and it's time for the final boss battle against Dracula himself. When Dracula appears, you can only attack him in the head to do damage to him, just like some of the other Draculas we've seen in the past. His first projectile that he starts firing at you is a straight fireball that will break apart into two separate fireballs when you hit it. If you try to jump over it, it breaks apart and shoots upward directly at you, immediately hurting you. One way to block yourself from actually taking damage from the fireball is to jump up and hit him and hold your whip out, so it then forms in front of you, allowing you to completely block both fireballs as they come towards you. As long as you're not directly under where he's about to appear, you should be able to dodge a lot of his projectiles as the battle goes on. After a little while, he'll start changing up his pattern, as then he'll start releasing fireballs at you. These fireballs not only come from the ground, but they also have two different fire forms that start flying around the room as well. When you hit them, they fall to the ground and cause another fireball to appear. However, if he still has one fireball out when he reappears, when he tries to summon the next one, he'll only be able to summon one. If you still somehow have two of them on there, he can't summon any new ones. It'll take a long amount of time to keep draining his health. Just keep dodging these fireballs no matter which kind he has out at you, and just keep trying to deliver as much damage to him as you can. Also, after a while, he may release a little orb that will come out and start circling the screen. When this happens, if you're able to actually damage the orb, it will shoot out a whole thing of projectiles at you. However, once it's done firing, it also will drop a health item. After you've done enough damage, the screen starts flashing red and Dracula goes to his final form. This form has multiple amounts of lightning, 4 sets of lightning that will appear every time he appears. Your job is to stand in between two of the lightnings so you don't get hurt and can still deliver a hit or two to Dracula each time he appears. Thankfully, at this point he doesn't have much health left, but each time you get hit by the lightning, it will take almost half your health away each time, so you have to be extremely careful.